Nice to see lots of faces early on a Sunday morning. Welcome to FCP10 World, produced by Soho Editors. My name's Alex. I'm not Rory Canwell. He can't make it, so I've stepped in at the last minute to talk through a 1-minute broadcast film that was cut by Rory. This is a Oscar-nominated Spanish film called Time Code. You might have seen a bit about it. It's actually a 17-minute film, but our task was to create a 1-minute broadcast kind of cut down. So let's just have a look at this and then have a look at some of the elements of the workflow.
Hola. Venga, que vaya bien.
Adecuado para que podamos contarles, narrarles.
Ya está.
Yo es que no sé bailar.
I hope you agree. It looks lovely. It's shot on a mixture of red 5K, which is all the red shots down here, and GoPro 1080p. Final Cut Pro is virtually resolution independent. If you have a look at this clip here, I can access the red raw settings here, so I can do a quick one light and adjust all of that before I start editing, or I can create proxy files, or I can create optimized files. I've got lots of different workflows. In the most recent update of Final Cut, I can work in a new wide gamut color space, as seen here. Here's my library up here with all of the rushes in it. I've broken this down using smart collections and keyword collections in here. It's almost infinitely powerful, the way that you can actually break things down. For example, if I just look at my frame sizes folder here, I've broken down the media into 2 frame sizes. This was the GoPro, this is standard HD, and this was the red 5K. And you can see that if I click on there, this is just the red media. So this is all, it's basically a very quick search just based on the frame size like that. So this not only works on already imported media, any new media that comes in automatically goes into that search. But I can combine this search with, for example, a favorites filter up here, and I can see just the favorites of just the red media. Well, I've broken down the audio using keywords here, so I've pulled out various elements. So basically, I've just got a custom color here on the timeline, and I'm going to start cutting that to music very quickly. We've laid some music down here. I'm just going to play this, and I'm going to just put some cuts into the primary storyline here and illustrate some of the different edit types. So we're going to start with the girl basically going to work. Most importantly, I want this duration in the timeline to dominate, so I'm going to mark that just simply with an X and overwrite a clip into there. The next clip is a wider shot of her walking like this, and I'm going to create an effects shot whereby I wipe the title on using this tree here. You'll see that a little bit later, but most importantly, the out point, the part at which this finishes, is more important than the beginning, so I'm going to need to back time this edit. So I've marked the end of this shot there, and simply to fit that into this section here, I use the same shortcut, but just literally with the Shift key, and that back times the clip into the timeline there, and you should see that the shot now ends as the tree wipes out of frame. I've got a couple more shots. This is her going to work underground. It's a lovely sunny day, but she's working underground, so you can see why she's not very happy. This time I'm going to use a replace edit. Again, this is just cutting quickly to the music. The next shot is going to be a little montage of her getting ready, and what I'm going to do here again is just replace that into there. But this time we're going to start creating this split screen effect. So I'm going to mark this clip here, choose her buttoning up her tie there, and this time I'm going to press Q. And because I pressed X, we're now starting to multi-layer here and superimpose edits up here. The next bit's 2 shots from one source. So the bit I want first is where she walks through the door there. So I'm going to mark that as a favorite, F. And the next bit I want to combine is where he leaves his work there. So he just walks through frame there like so. And there's also dialogue. So I'm just going to press F for favorite there. But now, very quickly, if I just choose favorites there, I can now just see the 2 shots. Now, the dialogue's more important here than the actual timing and the timeline, so I'm just going to use a normal overwrite edit in there, and then I'm going to superimpose this shot here above that, again, using Q. And you can see these 2 shots now have audio in here. If I want to see the audio, I can double-click there, or I can actually open up my audio lanes and I can see all of the audio very quickly, like so. And you can see I'm going to try and combine the 2 elements of dialogue. Basically, they say hello at the beginning of the day. What will make that easier is if I solo one of these.
Venga. Venga. Que vaya bien.
So he says, I hope you have a nice day. And I want to slip that slightly, so I'm just going to move that. You can see the waveform moving backwards very easily. And I can trim the beginning of that shot because he also says buenas, which is hello, but that's kind of gets in the way. And I'm going to do the same with her. And as you can see, because the clip above is connected to it, that shot is now going to move. So that would be a little problem, but I can press a little shortcut and that will stop that clip connection from activating. So I can now slip this shot with impunity, ever so quick.
Hola. Que vaya bien.
So basically what I've got is 2 shots, one above the other, and we'll come back to that in a second. The next shot that I know I'm going to need is the very end shot. So the whole film basically revolves around the final shot. And I'm just going to literally put that at the end with an append edit. Very, very useful. Simple. The simplest of things are often the most powerful. I'm now going to jump forward a little bit. A little bit later in the edit, we've laid down a few more shots here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in some sound effects. This sound effects came from the Final Cut Pro library, included with everything. So there's a few footsteps there. I'll be lucky if they match immediately, but let's have a look. I'm just going to connect that down there. And again, I'm going to solo this. Slightly out of sync, but again, I can slip that. I may get away with that because you can't see her feet, but on the next shot, it's probably going to be a little bit more demanding, so I'm going to try the same thing. Again, let's just solo. Seems to start okay, but then it's drifting, so the speed is not right. It would have been very, very lucky. Anyone like to guess if it's faster or slower? It's quite difficult to tell, but I'll have a guess. So I can just activate the retiming menu on audio, just like you can with video. I'm going to guess it needs to be faster. Well, in fact, I know it needs to be faster, but I'm just going to make it faster. There's no trickery. I've made it about 125% there, and let's see if that fits. Maybe a bit too fast there, so I'm going to stretch it back out, maybe to about 120%, and then trim it back. And I'll probably do the same to match on this shot here. So take that down to about 120, and we're getting there. The next shot, where I'm going to add some sound effects, is this. Again, there's a little marker there where she's typing the keyboard. It just helps subconsciously with your belief in the reality of the narrative. So all I need is a tiny little bit of a keyboard press, and I'm going to put that in there and see if that works. Again, That's working. The next part I want is a radio broadcast. So we've got a little bit of Spanish radio here.
Torne adecuado para que podamos.
And again, this is going to be in the office, so I'm going to press X and put that shot down there.
Se torne adecuado para que.
Okay, so we've got the music, we've got the dialogue, and we've got the sound effects now all going on. So that's getting quite complex. What I'm going to do now, so I can make it's starting to look a little bit complicated, but what I am going to do, mark all of these effects shots here, not the dialogue there, and I'm going to change the audio roles to effects. So immediately I've got visual feedback, so I can see what I'm doing, and that makes me feel a lot more confident that I know what's happening in the timeline. It's not something that is always done, but you can do this with video, and it will make things a lot easier with the video. So I'm going to come to the timeline index here and type go. Yeah, and I can see immediately all of the shots with go. But what I want to do is I want to permanently see that. So I'm literally, they're all selected here in the timeline. I'm just simply going to right-click that, and I'm going to change that role to GoPro there, and then I'll immediately see a lot more clearly in the timeline what I'm doing. Again, I'm going to type in A and 0, which will find all of the red media, and I'm going to do the same thing with this, and I'm going to choose red there. So then you immediately see the red shots. These shots are blue because the audio roll is dominating. So this is making my life a lot easier as the timeline becomes more and more complicated. It would help a producer, director to be able to see where the shots were so that you're not becoming confused. Now, color grading generally comes at the end of the workflow, but initially when I look at these shots, you can see it's got a yellowy color cast. It would be nice to be able to sort of fix that. So I can simply just select all of those GoPro shots there and color balance them, which is not necessarily a permanent thing, but it's automatically just gets rid of that color cast like that. As an example of something else that I can do, I can just quickly come into, say, this final shot here. Always like to take a little bit of saturation out of the highlights and the shadows, and take it up a bit in the mids, maybe take up the contrast, have a look at the video scopes, just so I know what I'm playing with, just so I know what I've got to play with when it actually comes down to doing the color grade. But what is nice is that I can actually start jumping around between these different elements if I feel like I want to. And it also looks a little bit yellow. This shot looks maybe a little bit, tiny bit yellow. Maybe there's some fluorescent light in the underground car park. So I can very easily fix that just simply by dragging the midtones, which is probably the most important in terms of skin tone, up towards the blue, and that gets rid of this yellowish cast there. And I can save that as a preset here and add it to others, or I can actually save it as an effect here, or I literally can copy it and I can paste it to other shots literally by choosing paste attributes and copy that color correction onto here. Now that I'm here on this shot, I just want to show you a little quick wipe effect, how quickly it is to knock up some actual traditionally online effects. So I'm going to mark that shot, come up to the text titles here. I'm just going to add a simple basic title above this shot, and the title of the film is Timecode. So I'm going to type that in. I'm going to make the font a little bit bigger, and I'm going to change the font to the one that they used in the film, which is a little bit further down here. And I want to wipe this on, as I said, with the tree. So let's see how easy it is once you know a few little tricks. So the major trick I'm going to use is I'm going to mask off this with another copy of the base layer, and then I'm going to add a mask. I'm going to draw a mask, so you can basically draw. You've got a freehand draw tool on the pretty much any shot you want. So I'm going to bring the cursor to around here, and I'm going to start drawing a mask around the top layer. Doesn't have to be that complicated because luckily it is a straight edge here. And I'm just going to track this manually by hand, by eye. So I've put one keyframe in there, and then I'm going to move along the timeline until the tree is almost off screen, and I'm literally just going to drag the edge of this mask like so to there. And bearing in mind this is 5K red. Maybe not perfect, but that took, what, less than a minute. It's very, very quick, and it's all inside of Final Cut Pro. The next thing I want to show you is how the genesis of this split screen occurred. So she walks in the door. She says hello in that shot, and in the other shot, he basically gets his jacket and says, have a nice day, hope it goes well. I'm just going to hide the top shot, and I'm going to start on her. So how I'm going to achieve this is I'm going to actually add a generator, just simply a bit of black above her. And what I'm going to do, that's full frame to start with, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop the right-hand side so I can see her like so. She moves out of shot, and what I want to do is I want to see she goes out of the screen, and I want to keep the action in the right-hand side. So again, I'm going to manually track this. So as she gets to round about there, I'm going to turn on the transform effects, keyframing, wireframe, and as she moves across, I'm basically just going to simulate a little camera pan, nothing too strong. I now want to achieve the same thing above on that shot. There might be another extra little issue that I'm going to have to deal with here that some of you may spot. So I'm going to crop the left-hand side. I think it's the left. Yes, I got that right again. It's round about 1880, round about there. The first thing I want to do is get rid of the microphone. So I'm just going to zoom in like that, drag the shot over a little bit like so, and that's probably going to be my starting point. So we've completely lost her, so that's quite good. So he's going to come in like that. Maybe I'll start a little bit to the left like so, and then as he moves out of frame, I'm going to add a little keyframe there, and gently, if I click this cross here, that allows me much more accuracy with the vertical and horizontal movement. And again, let's see if we get the result that I want. Okay, so that's looking quite good in terms of the move. But now what's happened is that this shot is now masking the shot underneath her side. So I can very quickly select those two shots that make up the left-hand split screen and create a compound clip of that, call that left-hand side, and that's there. It's still being masked, but I can simply now just crop him there. And the only thing I need to do on her now is to choose spatial conform. And that's pretty much how the split screen effect was created. So now I'm going to jump forward to quite a few steps, as you'll see, in the final version, and I want to talk about output. So again, you can see as the timeline becomes more complicated, how useful these different color effects are. So I can immediately see, or I can see these are the sort of CCTV effects. There's a black and white sort of a raster effect being added to make this look all black and white here. But I can immediately see what's going on. It also helps, I think, with the story. When you look at the timeline, you can actually see how the story is developing as well. So finishing, as you can see, this is now starting to get quite complicated. In an actual film, there's going to be a lot more effects down here. So what I can do, and this is new to this version of Final Cut Pro, I can just basically create a compound clip of the whole sequence, like so, and that flattens all down here. And now, that doesn't look very useful, does it? It doesn't look like I can mix this particularly well. But wait. If I come up to the audio inspector and I can arrange this in roles, all I have to do now is come to my timeline index and choose Show Audio Lanes. And I've now got 3 individual lanes of audio for dialogue, effects, music. So I could keyframe the music, I can take that up and down. I could add, for example, a compressor to the dialogue, just to make sure that the audio levels are all nice and strong.
Hola. Venga, que vaya.
So that's incredibly versatile there. Because this is a broadcast job, I need to look at the scopes, and I also can turn on my range check. And this range check is basically showing me anything that's out of gamut. So you have to be very careful with broadcast. The internet is pretty much agnostic. You can put anything on there. With broadcasters, you still have to be very careful. So, this little zebra here is basically telling me that that's where I'm going to have problems. Okay, so there would be 2 choices. One I would have to go back to the original shot and take the levels down or up. You can see the problem here. There's a little bit of footage just below black level 0, so that's probably what's causing a problem there. Rather than the highlights, it's actually the shadows that are causing an issue here. But I can come to my color filters, and I can add a broadcast safe filter here, and that hopefully pretty much fixes all of that in a couple of seconds. Now, it's a nice thing to have in your tool set at the end of a job that's just an extra bit of security. In terms of output, when I click Output, Master File, Share, I can output this as this. We started this with a 4K timeline, so it's double the width of a standard HD. So I can output this to 4K if I want to. So I could choose the standard ProRes video and audio output. If I want to create a standard HD project, I'll just make a duplicate. That's a duplicate there. I'm going to call that HD. And how hard is it going to be to change the frame size to HD? Oh, I've done it. It's that quick. Literally, to change, everything's fitted in to the frame perfectly well. I can now choose my Master HD output, and I can share that. And this will give me all the extra codecs, AVC Intra, XD Cam, favored by different countries across Europe. So I've got all of this ability natively within Final Cut Pro. So I'll just share that, put that on the desktop. And that's the end of this presentation. Thanks for listening.